All right, good evening, everybody. It's 1 minute to 8. I want to spend the 60 seconds to quickly do a roundup of what we learned last week. Last week, I was able to teach us about Enoch, and I said clearly that Enoch, one of the purposes of Enoch was to prepare uh, Noah. He wasn't the direct father of Noah, but he was a grandfather to Noah. And because of the long lifespan they had, it was easy for him to groom Noah up in such a manner that Noah was able to know the ways of God. Another thing to note about Noah was the fact that the fundamental reason God preserved him was because in Genesis chapter 2, the entity to whom God gave the earth was man. God didn't give the earth to fallen angels. God didn't give the earth to good angels. God didn't give this earth to any angel. God gave this earth, this world, to the sons of men. So basically, when Adam lost his rights by eating the forbidden fruit, the opportunity came for spirits that were not given any right in this world to begin to operate here. The Bible described some spirits that decided to befriend the daughters of men. And some Christians argue that no, these are descendants of Seth, and then there are descendants of that, and that's the reason. But it's not true. Because if descendant of man marry descendant of man, they cannot give birth to giants and men of great renown, people that are vast in sorcery, the Nephilim. You couldn't even call them men. No, 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 no. I've seen a lot of marriages. If in fact, sometimes uh, perish that thought because the head pastors say that no, the sons of men are sons of Seth, then the sons of whatever. Every time I look at that argument, it didn't make any sense based on the context. The context was that they produced giants, they produced a race called the Nephilim, they produced a crossbreed between men and angels. And so at that time in the world, man was at a great disadvantage. It was the smallest, they didn't have any, in fact, they didn't have much of an advantage, even though this was supposed to be his habitation. So when I was studying this, the Holy Spirit reminded me of something that happened some years back. So when I had my first child, we had to get a housemaid to take care of him, to support us, not to take care of him. She was not wasn't I refused to take somebody that's underage. So I made sure that she was somebody that was in her twenties who actually needed the money to go to school. So that while the person is working with us, the person can save some money and then proceed to school. I didn't want to take any of the 12, 13 people advised that we should take something like that. I said no, because I didn't want to be part of anybody encouraging children to go into child labor. So this particular girl, she likes baby food a lot. Uh, Apart from the normal food, you notice that every time you open, maybe uh, that time I wasn't so wealthy. So for my first child, we used to buy, forgotten that formula now, naan. Yeah, naan. So of course there are other ones that is after meal and all those family, but we couldn't afford that. So we are buying naan. It was one of the cheapest that I could afford at the time. And then I noticed that the thing will finish in 2 days. And you have to believe me, before she joined us, the baby could basically eat that tin of naan for maybe 5 days or maybe 6 days. So I will have budgeted it into my salary. Like, okay, if she's going to eat six, okay, one per week, maybe he will eat five, and then I'll set up. I think I was saving 1,002 at the time, so I will have set apart the money. And then as soon as this girl arrived, baby food was finishing in 3 days, 2 days. Ah, so at the point I had to like ah, what is this? Like, what? No. So eventually, the guy had to go. Nobody could beg me. I told the mother to come and pick him, to come and pick her. And that's exactly what God did here in Genesis chapter 6. The resources of the earth was meant for man. But then the giants and the Nephilims, all those big, strong, mighty beings, were contesting resources with man. And they were putting man at a very grievous disadvantage. I would like you to pay attention to how the age of men started to drop after the life of Methuselah. You see somebody like Enoch at 300. You have to understand what that means. And it wasn't, some of us will read the Bible and then we'll say, God said the days of man will be 120 years. Look, look, let me teach you scripture. I know you wouldn't have ever heard this before, but let me teach you today. Now, I'm 42 years old. I do not claim to have all the knowledge of the world. Believe me. So, what I'm saying, you have the right to search and check it out, or to believe me. But I don't want you to just believe me. I want you to actually search it out and check it out. So many people believe that God was saying that the days of man will be 120. That means God has cut short his age so that he's going to be living for 120 years. Go and read that scripture again. That's not what God said. I know I've shocked most of you, but it's the truth. God didn't say anything like that. What God said was that between the day he spoke and the day when there will be a flood on the earth, 120 years. If you go back to your book of Genesis and you count the days and the years between the day God said, the imagination of man is terrible. Now I'm going to reduce his years to 120. And you read that and you say, oh, that means he's cutting his age to 120. And then you look at the timing, you see that it's exactly 120 years from the moment God spoke, exactly 120 years to the days of the flood. So the reason this is important in this discussion is this: when we begin to say that Jesus is coming back, and people say, "Oh, the Son of Man said we never know the time, they never know the day. Oh, there's no way to calculate it. Oh, this and that." Believe me, that God has left more than enough in the scriptures to tell us, just like He did for children of Israel when He told them that they will spend 70 years in exile the first time. The second time, the first time He said they will spend 400, they spent 430. 4 generations was what He called it. Only overspilling by 30 years because of Moses' unpreparedness. Because when they were there 390 years, uh, Moses was basically born at that time when they were there 390. So Moses was ready, so to say, but he couldn't understand the mission well. That was the point I was trying to make. Same thing when they were 70 years. Daniel knew that their time was up and he was praying, and eventually they got their freedom. The same way, 120 years here was complete and there was a flood. God is very, very precise when it comes to timekeeping. And so from the moment God spoke to the moment when there was a flood was 120 years. And that was what God was talking about, that the days of all these beings, after 120 years, they are all dead. Why did they get 120 years? Why did Noah get 120 years? It was for preparation. Let me say that again, for preparation. God wanted the seed of man, that is Noah, to be preserved. The problem is if there's going to be a flood, then there has to be a ship. There's going to be a ship, then there has to be some technology employed in constructing it. Noah was a farmer. He had never had anything to do with water before. He was taught in a vision how to build the ark. He had to go get the materials. He had to spend time constructing to instruction. It wasn't the magical ark. It was an ark that was actually built by grit, by sweat. It took Noah single-handedly and his children 120 years to put that ark together. When you go check in the annals of history, he even tried. There are some of us here, if they give you hammer and nail and wood and they tell you to construct an ark, you will not construct it, you will not finish it in 10 generations. And I'm not joking. Even if you look at Google, Even if you look check Google and you are following Google, some of us will not finish the ark in 50 years. It's very true. I'm here. I'm one of those. Because sometimes, especially when it comes to these computer things, I'll say, "Oh God, what is all this? What is all this?" Some people get it so easily. Before today, I had to ask for a lot of help for all of the things I was doing, and I realized that it's not as if I don't know this thing. Just I've just come say about it. Don't talk of now giving me hammer and nail and telling me to go and fetch food for myself and then build an ark that will contain all the animals, not just me and my children. Has to be big enough to contain all the animals, to contain all sorts of things. It took Noah 120 years to build the ark. That was why he got that time frame. It has nothing to do with his age. That has to be settled. One of the reasons why men were dying younger after the flood was because there was what we call there was no reason for them to live longer than 120. There was no reason for them. When they were living very old, it was to preserve them. Let me say that again so you understand. They had giants in the land and they were men. The same way nowadays, if you look at animal population, you'll get what I'm saying now clearly. Their gestation period for a pig is basically like I don't know how many months, maybe 6 months or thereabout, I'm not sure. But then when the people have children, have the piglets, you're going to have 12, 13, 10, 8, it will be plenty. The same thing with sheep, goats, they have many children, the sperm period is quite short. You notice that it is part of biological ecosystem and evolution because it is sure that they will lose some of their children to predators. So herbivores get to have children, more children. Carnivores tend to have less children. I'm talking about offspring now. When I say children, sorry, I'm used to Christian language. I'm just a biology for you here. So herbivores tend to have more offsprings. Carnivores tend to have less of offspring. The reason being that carnivores end up preying on herbivores. And so for the sake so that herbivores will not go into extinction, they must compensate for their losses with number. So you can see a group of buffalo, you see a group of buffalo, maybe like 200, 500. They are elephant, there will be many of the herbivores, they'll have many children, they reproduce quickly. But then the carnivores, they will have one or two spawns, here and there for balance. They will not have equal number. The reason being that for the sake of balance of nature. So when the giants were existing, because they were so powerful, the Nephilims, giants, and all that, because they were so powerful, and man couldn't contend with anything with them, man had to live longer, so that man would give birth to more children. So that as they were dying, they were reproducing. As they were dying, they were reproducing. So because of the competition, if man didn't live long enough, all the men would have been extinct. So man had to live long, had to live to 600, 500, 800, 700 years and give birth to 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 120 children per go. And then their children will give birth to many children so that the more they die, the more they still have numbers remaining. That's basically the mathematics before the flood. The reason why they had to live long was basically because of procreation. God had to allow them continue to breed so that they will be preserved after this judgment of Genesis chapter 6. Now again, Noah was called a perfect man. Now I have to say this for the benefit of those who are listening to me who had never heard about Noah before. That what made Noah perfect was his obedience. It had nothing to do with Noah's behavior. There was no law that told Noah that this is how you must conduct yourself. So then, if there is no law, how can one man be perfect and another one be imperfect? You have to look at the paradigm and the parameters. So now you have a group of students in a class, and this is summer holiday. So it's not as if they are going to do anything serious. Just just told their parents to bring them to school so that their parents can rest, or so that their parents can go to work and put their mind at rest that their children are somewhere safe. So we started summer school. During the summer school, we tried to teach the children some basic things, but not too much, just for them to leave home and come and play. So there's no grading at the end of summer school. Nobody will get an A, nobody will get an F. So how then can you go to summer school, finish summer school, and then grade the children and say, this one is excellent, this one is semi-excellent, this one is poor, and this one is weak? How do you do that? You don't. You basically don't. Let me say that in another way. I want you to get it. Because many of us, when the Bible gives certain things, we don't tend to look at the context. So when we hear that Noah was a perfect man before God, was an excellent man before God, oftentimes we assume that Noah earned it. That means Noah was a good man, upright, holy. That's rubbish. That's not. There was no parameter in the world to measure holiness, to measure excellence, to measure anything like that at the time. It was Moses that brought the law. There was no law in the days of Noah, and when there is no law, therefore you cannot use parameters to measure excellence, holiness, goodness. You cannot. So the only reason Noah was perfect was because he was the only one in the world at the time who was tuned to the frequency of God. So you see what I'm saying now? I was reading years ago. I was reading a particular book. The book was titled "48 Laws of Power." Many of us here will have read the book. And one of the laws told the story, a very short story that I want to understand. I'll try and narrate it in a minute. The story told of a man who had a vision. In that vision, he saw that everybody in his town went mad because they drank water from a particular river. The water was polluted, and the more they drank the water, the more they lost their mind, and they lost their mind, they lost their understanding. They were just, they were just living like mad people, so that he couldn't understand the language again in that vision. And it was so impressed upon him that that vision was true, that vision was so true that this vision will come to pass. He needs to come to pass. So he told his son the next day, said, my son, what to do? Let's go and fetch water and put it in the house. We will not drink water from that river again. So the son said, oh, daddy, so that this is what I saw. I saw that everybody drank the water and they went mad. I don't want us to go mad. So we will be the only one that wouldn't go mad. So this man got the water. They saved enough water in their house. Suddenly the people started becoming mad. And then he would tell the son, can you see they are mad? Can you see they are mad? Can you see they are mad? And then he was drinking water in the house. One day, he and his child wanted to go out. They wanted to buy something in the market. They got to the market. Everybody was laughing at them. Do you know why? Everybody that went mad now understood each other. The people that were not mad, they couldn't speak. When they spoke to the people selling things, those people didn't understand them again. They were the only ones that were preserved. But then they were the ones at a disadvantage. They couldn't communicate, they couldn't buy, they couldn't sell. So the man said, okay, we know that they are all mad. But in their madness, they are buying, they are selling, they are building houses, they are giving their children to marriage, they are living their life on. Their language has changed, their way of thinking has changed. But yet, they continue to live as human community. Here we have isolated ourselves. We are not mad, but we cannot live in isolation. So the man told his son, we have to go and drink the water from the river so that we'll be like them. And the son said, I agree with you. So they went to the river and they drank. And when they drank, they became like those men. And that law was teaching a very salient point that I want most of us here to understand about Noah today. At that time, Noah would have been this man who was buying water and keeping it, preparing for the ark, who was preparing for the ark, so building an ark. His language and the language of the people of the world was different. They were laughing at him. They didn't understand, does it make any sense? And Noah would rather allow people to laugh at him, jeer at him, make mockery of him, insult him, because he was so sure of what he heard from God. That was what made him perfect. Had nothing to do with his conduct, his behavior, whether he washed his teeth, or no. Had nothing to do with that. It was simply because he stood for God when he ought to stand for God. If in a generation one man stood for God or with God, that man is the perfect man. Because all God wanted from day one was that all men should know him, and come and become intimate with him. And God even prefers it when that one man stands out, like Joseph did in Pharaoh's court in Egypt, like the four Hebrews did in Babylon. When we stand out like that, then our perfection, our salvation is made evident. But when we don't stand out, when we join the crowd easily, when God will say it and I will follow people's opinion, then we are not perfect. So Noah's perfection here was as a result of the fact that he decided to obey God against all odds. And that obedience was not an obedience of behavior or conditioning, but a behavior of preserving his generation. What he did was both self-serving and selfish. At the same time, the Bible recorded that he announced to the old people and told them to come, which is one of the things we also have to do. We have to announce to people about salvation. We have to tell them we are already in the ark. Like Jesus Christ described this generation and the reality of this generation like the days of ark, like the days of Noah. We are already at this time at the age of Noah, at the time of Noah. We are there. But the key thing here for every one of us is that we shouldn't be selfish about it. We should tell people about Jesus, about our salvation. The same way Noah was telling people to come into the ark. They refused to listen because it didn't make any sense. Just like Christianity doesn't make sense to some people now. But a day will come when there will be a flood and there will be water covering the earth, and the ark which you and I are in will be carried up by God at the blast of a trumpet. I would be changed. That day they will come to understand that it wasn't a code, that it wasn't a figure of speech, that what the Bible wrote was clear. Now, Noah did all that. The flood came. The Bible said that God was the one that shut the door of the ark, uh, and then the ark lifted, and they were there safe in the ark. All the animals obeyed Noah, which was another thing I would like us to understand. That at that time, remember I said something about language. I'll still say it again because it happened again later on, even in Noah's generation. God didn't give them a new language. They were still speaking the original language from Eden at the time. Original language from Eden includes the ability to communicate with animals, includes the ability to communicate with practically everything that is it's simply speaking in tongues, speaking in meaning. So now we speak in tongues, but a few of us can understand each other's tongue and we can understand the meaning. But in those days, when they speak, they have meaning. They understand the meaning of what is said. So it's not that you hear to understand. When you communicate with me, you don't even have to say so much, and yet I would know what you want to do. It's how it is with with the kind of communication they had in the early days. And so Noah was able to communicate with animals, had no issues, and it wasn't even odd or strange for a human being to communicate with animals. At that time, most people do not even kill animals for food, except the Nephilims and the others. Most people, like Noah and Co., they when they kill animals, it's usually for sacrifice and other things, but not for food. In those early days, they were food gatherers. They mostly ate fruits. Anyway, inside the ark, because of time, Noah wanted to know when the ark had landed and when they are free to leave the ark. So sent out a raven, you all know the story, sent out a dove, sent out this. At the end of the day, he was able to know that, okay, it's time for us to come out of the ark. The first thing Noah did when he came out of the ark was to make a sacrifice to God, to say thank you. Basically, this is very important because the Bible said concerning you and I that after the rapture, Christ will present us, you and I, to God, the same way Noah presented this sacrifice to God as an offering. It was a picture of what is to come, that after a particular season, God is the God of new beginning. There will still be another new beginning, and we will be the ones that will be presented as a holy, as a living sacrifice unto God. We are holy and we are acceptable. So God is going to accept us. That done, I have to talk about Noah's relationship with his children because of time. After the whole shenanigan closed and Noah had to start again, the Bible told us about Noah starting a vineyard, planted a vineyard, and then one day he got drunk. So many people here would assume, oh, oh wow, why would he do that, holy man? You know, when I read the scriptures, I try to be, I try to understand human human character. You know, it's very difficult things, a very difficult thing to be lonely. Do you remember the story? We'll still get there later. The story of Lot and his daughters. Do you remember how they said that they gave their father a drink and he drank and they were able to sleep with him or thereabout? When a huge loss or something as crazy as happened in the days of Noah, and that happened also in the days of Lot. In this case, water, in that case, fire and brimstone from heaven happens around you. Go and ask anyone who had suffered from post traumatic stress disorder, who has seen war, who has seen carnage, who has seen people dying by the thousands. Their psyche is never normal. I know some of you are already nodding now because I know it's true. You cannot see so much death and still sit down and be laughing. You know, you have no friends to talk to. You used to see a lot of people, you don't see people anymore. So this guy drinking uh, is basically what many people will resort to in the course of having seen life from that perspective. What they've seen, what they had been through, was traumatic. He was giving thanks to God, but of course, seeing millions of people die like that is not something to joke about. It's not going to be something you say, oh, thank God, I'm alive. So I'm going to be the one defending myself. No, Noah still had people that he cared about because we are social beings and we are built to at least, even if it's your enemy, some of us at least have a neighbor. When I moved to my new house, I remember my house self was shouting that, this house is in the forest. Where will I be able to talk to? You have to understand that. And I had to tell her that have faith, people will still move, and people moved. So that she had people to talk to because it wasn't fair to move away from town, to move into a place that's isolated, and then you expect people to be thriving. You need communication. So Noah didn't have that. That's the fact. So basically, I'm telling you why it got wrong. It's just a natural expression of loneliness and other psychological things. Now, his son that came in that saw him drunk, that was laughing. Uh, was it the boy's fault? Many of us may say yes. Really? Because basically, their father had condemned a lot of things as a servant of God. And then the father did it. And then the boy came in and was like, oh my God, you are no better. You are no better than the people that died in the flood. Really? Because you should have done better. See, you are saved from the flood and all that, but the boy was young, so he didn't understand some of the things going on. So basically, I just wanted to see that on both ends, human quality came to play. Human quality came to play. Noah, in his own right, was going through some emotional issue. The boy too was young, impetuous, and but what Noah did, cursing the boy, showed us something important that you and I must pay attention to. Showed that even though Noah was called righteous, there are a lot of things internally that Noah didn't deal with. There are a lot of things that were still in his belly. A lot of the qualities that he learned here and there that are not consistent with God's nature, that he still had in his human quality that brought that about. And so he caused the son. But thank God that it was in the days of Noah that causes sons could be cursed. Uh, Nowadays, God showed us in the book of Numbers that if you curse somebody's son, nobody can curse him. Remember that story when Balaam wanted to curse the children of Israel. You remember that God did not allow him. The same thing applies to you. No man can curse you. Let me say it again. So some of us here, there is a family curse. There is a family curse. If you are born again, no man can curse anyone that God has called his own. Nobody can lay a charge against the elect. That's scripture. And so you are saved forever from any familiar cause or family cause or anything. Noah could curse his son, but in Christ, nobody can curse you. This is where I'll rest the teaching for today. Thank you all for attending and participating and taking notes. The class will continue next week. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. If you had died an hour, I will have allowed us to open the floor and ask questions. You can always ask questions in the group. I'll wait to answer some of the questions if you have any. God bless you. Have a great week ahead. I'll see you guys next week. Glory be to God for a good class. For in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.